Hey guys, today we're going over side control. So we're basically going to go over positional advancement and how to control an opponent from on top. So what we're going to start with is the basic way we're going to hold standard side control. What you want to do is you want to underhook the forearm with your forearm. With your near arm, you want to crossface, which is different than a wrestling crossface. A wrestling crossface is trying to drive the chin with your forearm. What we want to do in jiu-jitsu is, because we want to be able to wrap the head, we're going to put our arm under and try to control the chin with our shoulder. And with our hips, we want our hip that's closest to his hip always touching his hip, because he's going to be trying to get his leg in, and I want to be able to beat his leg at the root of his leg, which is at his hip. So arm under the arm under the head. I'll grasp my hands together so I freeze both my arms in place, and my hip really close to my hip. So this is how I'm going to ride side control when it's standard. If the guy ends up making it to the fetal position, it's going to be easier for him to get his knees in, grab me with his legs. If he does that, I'm going to have to do a hip switch. So this is what it's going to look like. My partner Brandon bridges into me and he gets sideways. I'm going to take my bottom leg away from him by switching my hips. If I leave my leg there, he can grab it in half guard. But if I pull my leg away, then if he tries to grab me with his legs, get his knee on me, then it makes it way more difficult. When I do this hip switch, I have to control his elbow now instead of his head. So if I had his head, I don't have to worry about his head anymore, because I'm not trying to hold him down. I'm trying to keep him, trying to stop him from climbing me. But if he gets his elbow to my hip, he can start pushing me away. So I release the head, I go back to the elbow, and I'm going to hike up at the elbow. This is going to help to not let him get up, and it's also going to stop him from propping on me. If my opponent lies his back down, I'll hip switch back to standard side control. If my opponent bridges back into me, gets the fetal position, I'll hip switch again, and I'll attack that bottom arm. If the guy's got a gi, you can grab the sleeve to wrench up on the arm. Alright guys, we're going to go over a transition to mount. This is just a basic transition to mount. So we're going to start from standard side control. I have my hip really close to his hip, and what I'm going to do from here, a little bit, is I'm going to kind of go in segments. I'm not going to try to go for mount all at once. The first move I'm going to do is I'm going to put my knee on his hip bone. So I'll take my hip off of his hip bone, and I'll place my knee onto his hip bone. As I do that, I'm going to make sure I don't cross his center line. So I don't want to drive over his belly with my knee, because I'll be very susceptible to getting rolled over when I try to do that. So if we go back. So once I put my knee on his hip bone, now what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to get my leg to clear center line, but I'm not going to have my whole body go. A big thing you'll run into is your opponent will put his hand on your knee to stop you from having your leg go over. So I'm going to start to square my body up with his, get out of being perpendicular while I wrench his arm away. So I'll tug hard at my underhook and try to force my forehead on the mat above his head, which will take his hand off my knee, and then my leg will go over him, but not my body. So if Brandon was able to roll away from me, he wouldn't roll me over with him. I would still be able to get control of his torso. So again, I'm in, knee to the hip, he puts his hand on my knee. I'm going to wrench his arm off my knee, my leg's going to snare, and if he doesn't roll, then I'll settle into mount afterwards. Okay, this next position is called a go behind. Super important if your opponent starts to mobilize. So as long as I have a good crossface and underhook, I pretty much can stop the guy from mobilizing. But maybe we get jostled around, I get loosened up, the guy gets his arms together in front of me, he starts to mobilize into me. So now his back is exposed, but it's not directly exposed to me. So I have to go behind my opponent. So I have an arm over his back, arm under his head. This has to switch. My arm goes over his head, my other arm goes in front of his hip line, so this is going to stop him from being able to chase me right away. And I'm looking to pass control from my arm to my leg. Once my leg takes over, then I'm going to pass control again from this arm to this arm. So this arm will go in front of his body all the way to the mat, my elbow all the way to the mat. Then I do a big scorpion step backwards, and then I do a small technical stand-up. We call it a tech-up, but I'm going to technical stand-up so that his back's exposed to me again. So if he continues his way up, his hips go up, my hips go down, I snag his back. Or if he goes back to a side control, my arms are ready and waiting to nab him in a crossface underhook. So we'll show it from this angle. My partner is able to mobilize into me. He starts to mobilize, my arms switch. I pass control to my leg so that this arm can steal control from this arm. a big scorpion step back, and then a small technical stand up so I don't go into my feet. I just square my hips back up. From here, if my opponent goes up, I drop my hip, I have hooks, or from here, if my opponent goes down, ready and waiting on my crossface and underhook.